Hello everyone, I'm Li-Hsin Ning from National Taiwan Normal University. Today I'm going to share with you my research on pitch perception and vocal pitch control. I'm looking at the correlation between the two in a bunch of speakers with different musical and tonal language backgrounds. First of all, we know that music and speech share many acoustic features. They can be characterized by its pitch, spectral features, duration, or even intensity. And there seems to be an overlapping network of music and language in our brain. That means if you use tonal contours in your language, then the accuracy of pitch perception might be enhanced. Or the other way around, with musical training, you might be able to identify the emotion in prosody. On the other hand, research has shown that our motor system also plays an important role in speech perception. For example, speech perception of the tritone paradox has a close relation to the listener's vocal range. Stimulating the larynx premotor area with TMS will give you a faster reaction time in discriminating the pitch shift of a small interval. In this research, I'm going to look at the correlation between pitch perception and vocal pitch control by using the pitch shift paradigm. And what is pitch shift paradigm? And how does that work? Basically, we feed unexpected and artificial changes in pitch back to the listener when he or she was vocalizing. The direction of the shift could be upwards or downwards. So for example, ah, or then we measure how speakers respond to the unexpected shifts in pitch. Typically, speakers compensate to the pitch shift stimuli. So when you hear ah, you go ah, the other way around. If you hear ah, you go ah. I'm going to play the audio for you to see how that works. This is the audio that the speaker heard when he or she was vocalizing. And this is a downward shift. And the response would be upward, which is a compensatory, but the shift in terms of the response is very small. I'm going to play it 3 times and see if you can hear the small shift in the response. And how does compensation come from? And when speakers hear the perturbed auditory feedback, they would get tricked into thinking they have made an error in the vocalization. So the brain is doing something to compare the shifted pitch with the target pitch in the internal model, which is established through years of training and memory. In order to reduce the error, responses to auditory perturbation are typically compensatory. Compensation that happens within 100 to 150 milliseconds is a reflex-like response. It is the evidence of online control of speech through auditory motor feedback loop. That means your brain is doing a good job monitoring the error during speech production. That has been verified in more than 25 studies. If you're interested in more details, you may check the references up here. The magnitudes of pitch shift responses have to do with tone experiences or musical experiences. Research has shown that tone speakers or vocalists were able to suppress pitch shift responses. That suggests they were more stable in maintaining vocal pitch and less affected by the artificial perturbation. In this study, we would like to explore the correlation between the susceptibility to pitch perturbation and pitch perception abilities in speakers with different tone and musical experiences. We expect that smaller pitch shift responses would be related to more acute pitch perception. Let's take a look at the methods. We recruited 5 groups of participants: L2 beginners, L2 advanced learners of Mandarin, and Mandarin speakers without formal musical training, and Mandarin speakers specializing in instrument playing, and also Mandarin speakers specializing in vocal performance. The first task was musical memory task. There were 36 trials in which there are 2 monophonic musical phrases, and they had the same timbre but may differ in one or some of the musical notes. Here is an example. The listener had to judge whether the 2 musical phrases were the same or different. The melodies included keyboard instruments, percussion, stringed instruments, wind instruments, and electronic musical instruments. There was no accuracy feedback in this task. In the second task, we asked the listener to judge a series of 2 short pure tones and to see whether the second one was higher or lower than the first one in terms of pitch. The first pitch was always 500 Hz, and what was changed was the second pure tone. The first trial started from 96 Hz pitch difference. Here is an example for 500 versus 596 Hz. And here is another example for 500 versus 404 Hz. If the participant got 3 consecutive correct responses, then he would advance to a more difficult level, where the pitch difference was half. If the participant got 1 erroneous response, then he will regress to an easier level. Accuracy feedback on the computer screen was covered by a board that is to compare the results with the musical memory task. In the third task, which is the pitch shift task, we asked the participants to vocalize the vowel ah with a steady and comfortable pitch for 3 to 5 seconds. And in total, there were 60 vocalizations. That means 60 ahs. And the pitch shift stimuli were 200 milliseconds long, and they appeared roughly at the range of 1,000 to 1,500 milliseconds after vocal onset. The magnitude of the shift could be 50 cents or 100 cents. The direction was up or down. So in total, these 2x2 conditions give you in total 4 conditions. Let's take a look at the results. Mandel provided the interpretation of the perception scores at the end of the task, which it was snapshot up here in Table 1. And the data was based on 61,000 subjects. As you can see from Table 1, the average score was 70% correct. And back to our data. Most of the groups had above normal performance, except for L2 beginners. And Mandarin speakers with musical training, either instrumental or vocal, performed better than Mandarin speakers without musical training, and followed by L2 learners. And in the second task, Mandel provided interpretation, which was snapshot in Table 2. And as you can see, if you had less than 66 Hz, then you were above normal. And the data was from 11,000 subjects. And back to our own data, again, we found the same pattern. Mandarin speakers with musical training, either instrumental or vocal, perform better than Mandarin speakers without any musical training, followed by L2 learners. It is not clear whether L2 advanced learners have good pitch perception abilities prior to tone learning, or whether their pitch perception abilities were improved because of tone learning. However, based on the growing evidence that speech music are correlated, highly correlated, the latter one is highly likely. The results of Pearson correlation were depicted in Figure 6, with the stars indicating the level of significance. As you can see from the figure, particularly the two red rectangles, the perception abilities were significantly correlated with the abilities to control vocal pitch under small pitch perturbation. That means 50 down and 50 up. That suggests the better the perception abilities, the smaller the corrective pitch shift responses. So suppression was involved. We also ran the linear discriminant analysis, which included the perception and production measures as the predictive variables and the group as the outcome variable. We wondered whether we can predict the group from these measurements. First of all, we found musical training mattered because the musician overlapped with the vocalist, which is these two, the purple and the blue ones. Both had some distance away from the cluster of Mandarin, which is the green one in the middle, and the cluster of L2 beginner, which is the olive green, was the most distant from that of the speakers of musical training. And our L2 advanced learner, which is the red circle, somehow overlap with the cluster of Mandarin. That suggests they might be approaching the native light level on pitch perception and vocal pitch control. Discussion. Our results indicate that tone and musical experiences matter in both pitch perception and vocal pitch control. The first take-home message: speakers with tone or musical experiences have better pitch perception results and were less susceptible to pitch perturbation. And the less susceptibility to pitch perturbation suggests that they were able to ignore the artificial change in pitch when they are doing the vocalization. So experiences mattered. And the second one, pitch perception abilities were significantly related to the abilities to control vocal pitch. In other words, our perception and production for pitch are interdependent. If you are able to detect the pitch differences or memorize musical phrases, then you will be able to block out any changes or perturbation from the environment when you are vocalizing. Finally, the classification results suggest there was a gradient difference among the groups in terms of their perception and production. And there was an overlap between the Mandarin and the L2 advanced learners. So, achieving a native light pitch behavior may require more than 5 years of training. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your listening. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at li-hsin@ntnu.edu.tw. And I thank my assistant, Kelvin Kuo, in the data collection.